Alright, in the previous video, we finished up the color buttons. So I now have 3 buttons that I can click, and when I click on them, it adds a black border so I know it's the active one. And then in our script, we have a variable. Initially I started it as red, and when I click on the button, it changes that to whichever color is clicked on. So now we are ready to start drawing. So initially what I'm going to do is create a draw function that when I click anywhere on here, it's going to draw a circle where I click. And then we'll add a drag method so that when I drag, it keeps drawing. So to start off with just a simple draw function that draws a circle, I'm going to come down here and add in a function called draw. Now that draw function is going to be called when we click on the canvas. So up here at my canvas, I'm going to add an onClick. But when I call it, I want to send event information. The event information is how I'm going to know where it is that I'm clicking. So if I click right here at, say, maybe approximately 100, 100, I want the circle drawn there. If I'm down here at about 700, 700, I want the circle drawn down there. So I need to be able to send the event information. JavaScript events are like key down events, keyboard events, mouse events, and it stores information based on the event. And that information is what we can then use to determine where we draw that. So when I call my draw event, it's going to look like this. I'm going to say onClick equals draw, but then I'm going to send the event information that was tied to that click event, which means down here in draw, I need to be able to accept or take that information. So I'm going to give it a parameter called e, and then inside the draw function, I'm going to set a var x equals e dot x and a var y equals e dot y. That is storing the x and y coordinates that were sent via that event that triggered the draw function. Now I can use that to determine where I want to draw this. Now eventually I think when we go and start doing the actual dragging, I may end up removing some of this. It's going to kind of depend on how you want to try to approach it to make the drag effect work. But for now, we'll leave the x and y inside the actual draw function itself. Alright, so to draw a circle, ctx.begin path, ctx dot, and then I want to go ahead and set my fill color. So fill style equals, and color, once again, we have the color preset up here. So initially it's going to be red unless we click one of the buttons. So I'll set the fill style to whatever color is. Then ctx.arc is what we use to make the circles. And so now I need an x coordinate, which we just stored as x, and a y coordinate, which we just stored as y. So that's our e.x, e.y, stored as x and y. Then I need a radius. Radius is going to be the size, and remember we have a size variable. Now one thing to note with the size, if the size is 10, that means the circle's radius will be 10, which means its diameter would be 20. We may want to, and this is up to you, I'm going to go ahead and divide it by 2. So if it's 10, it'll actually put a 5 in here. So size divided by 2. So whatever the size is, radius is half of that. So I'm going to do that, because then when I go to change other shapes like squares, well, circles are going to be twice as big as the squares despite being the same size. So I'm going to do size divided by 2 to get the radius. That way our diameter actually ends up being the actual size. The next argument then is where do I want the arc to begin? At 0. And then the next one is the 2 times math.pi. So those are the 2 constants that we always use when we're drawing a full circle. And then lastly, I just need to fill it. So ctx.fill. All right, so now we already have up on the canvas, we've added the onClick. Calling draw sends the event. The event information is stored as x and y. So everything should now work. So let's refresh this. And before I draw, I'm going to go ahead and increase the size. I'm going to try changing my color to green. And there we go. I got a circle, except you can see right here's where my mouse was. Let's do this again to show you. My mouse is gonna be right here, but look where the circle ends up. Any ideas why that is happening? Well, what's happening is E.x is measuring from clear over here, the far left of the screen, over. So if my mouse is right here, that's maybe approximately 200 pixels from here to here. Well, when I'm drawing, then when I say x should be 200, well, that 200 is starting from the beginning of the canvas over to here. So I need to account for all the space. And if I zoom in, there's also space over here to the left of my tools as well. So I know my tools, I made that div 200, but there's some space here as well as some padding within. So I'm going to subtract maybe about 220 from that to see. So what I'm going to do is come in here. So E.x minus, oops, I'm going to try 220 to see. And this is going to kind of be a little bit of guess and check depending on your browser and what you set as your width and padding and all that. I feel like this should get me close. Okay, so that actually went back a little bit too far, and notice that's also going down a little bit from where I clicked, and that's because there's some space up here as well. So I'm going to back off of that a little bit, try like maybe 218. I'm also going to subtract a little bit from Y to account for the padding and the border up at the top, because the border is also included in that. And let's try this now. There we go, looks pretty good. Increasing the size, that's something you might want to go back and modify to make maybe increase by 5s or add a slider to make it a little easier to make big. Yeah, that's about perfect now. So once again, those numbers may vary a little bit for you depending on what padding you use, what widths you use, what border sizes you used. But those numbers should get you at least a good start and get pretty close, and you can adjust from there. All right, so that takes care of drawing when I click. Now I want to be able to drag and have it actually keep drawing as I go. So that will be the topic for the next video.